This money is not just about New York City. Joining us now, former National Security Council Senior Director during the first Trump administration and former senior FBI and DHS official Javed Ali, former Assistant District Attorney at the Manhattan District DA's office and MSNBC legal analyst Catherine Christian, former New York State Homeland Security Advisor and Director at Redland Strategies Michael Balboni, and former NYPD Chief of Department Terry Monahan. Everybody, thank you. Terry, I want to begin with you. You know, this is not just money that goes to New York City. It's money that affects Long Island, money that affects Westchester, money that affects Albany. How does it hamper the efforts of the entire state?
More than just the entire state. You know, Rebecca, Commissioner Warner talked about 71 plots. Even though every one of these plots may have had a nexus into New York, they also involved other cities and states around the country, both red and blue. Plots and the individuals that were arrested because of the funding that the NYPD received prevented terrorist attacks, not only in New York, but throughout the United States. And taking this money away, it endangers Americans all across this country. I find it as catastrophic type cuts.
Catastrophic?
Really, all Americans in trouble.
Catastrophic. You think it's catastrophic?
Absolutely.
Michael Balboni, do you agree? Catastrophic?
After the days of 9/11, two programs were developed: urban area security initiatives and the Homeland Security grant programs. They were designed to prevent large-scale attacks. And it's fair to ask, after 24 years, have the threats evolved? Have they changed? Because right now what we see targeted violence. The question really becomes, how effective are these grants now? Should we be looking not only to restore them, but to evolve them? You know, 24 years later, we're not fighting the same type of enemy. We're not fighting the same type of threat. So, you know, a lot of these grants, by the way, have gone up and down in terms of their funding levels. Not the first time we've had a reduction. Nonetheless, New York City and New York State is always top of the list in the urban area threat matrix. So to say that you're not going to partner anymore, or you're going to stop and not have a plan to say what you would replace it with, it just
do you see this as playing politics?
There's definitely politics involved in this, whether or not this is a specific program or a specific cut designed to enforce politics. You know, you mentioned it before, and great questions about, is the immigration policy part of the national security? The White House will say, yes, it is.
Yeah.
And you're saying that they've made us safer as a result of the things that they've done. How does that fit into the general threat matrix itself for the city of New York? That's a very tough question.
Well, so my question would be, if you want to go after immigration because you think immigration is a national security threat, why would you take the money from the other national security efforts in order to try and force that?
Well, I believe, and I don't know this for a fact, but that the White House views this as kind of a fungible thing. In other words, if they take away federal dollars, the state and the city are not going to let the programs just winnow away. They're not going to happen. But again, that is not what we want to hear in the city of New York. We are still the top threat. We need to have that partnership, and we need to evolve the tactics that will prevent the next attack, whether it's a large-scale attack or a focused security attack.
Chief Monahan, I'm told that you are nodding vigorously to this.
Listen, any cuts at this point in time, New York has been a target. We've had other terrorist attacks. We had the West Side bike lane vehicle ramming. We had the Chelsea bombing. We had the suicide vest bomber in Penn Station. These are ones that were able to actually happen. There's a lot more that could have happened that because of this funding, you know, it's great to say we can get this money from elsewhere, but we haven't. In 24 years, there's always a shortage of money. Are we going to say, well, there hasn't been an attack in a while? I was there on September 11th. I went to quite a few funerals, and we're still going to funerals today for people, first responders that went down there on 9/11. So as we come up to that 25th anniversary, let's not say we can relax any sort of money when it comes to counterterrorism.
So again, there is a partnership between the FBI and the NYPD on counterterrorism. Why is that partnership so important, Javed?
So, Katie, nice to be with you. And in my career in both Homeland Security and FBI, for counterterrorism in New York, the sort of number one sort of name of the game is NYPD because they have the most people on the streets here. And so that was always a joint collaboration between the federal side and NYPD. And as Rebecca mentioned, if these cuts do go into effect, they will be catastrophic to the program, counterterrorism programs that NYPD has been running for a couple decades.
What if they try to argue, the administration tries to argue, I'm not saying they are, that the FBI has got this covered? Don't worry about it.
And the FBI does have things covered to a degree here in New York City. It's the biggest field office in the United States for the FBI. But NYPD has 40,000 officers alone just in the New York Police Department, and they can put more resources on the street to protect New York in a way that New York FBI cannot. They're not a police force for the city.
There's an executive order, by the way, that Donald Trump just signed that makes designating a terrorist and putting somebody on the terrorist watch list much more broad. Is that going to affect the efforts of the JTTF?
That's a great question, because theoretically, absolutely it will, because now what it does is it shifts the focus from foreign actors to domestic actors. I served on a task force with the government talking about the radicalization within the United States. And there are groups that are well-funded and well-armed within the United States. The domestic terrorism is an aspect of our security that we've not really focused on. What's happened now with this executive order, you're going to expand it. And to your point, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, what's their main goal is to share intelligence, share capabilities, and understanding about the threats.
What about the broad way that it's being these potential terrorists are being categorized? It seems like if it's just somebody who doesn't, I don't know the full extent, but it could be that somebody who's not aligned with Donald Trump's policies or priorities, or is a liberal, could potentially be put on that.
I believe that the way, if you read the executive order, and our legal here will probably weigh in on this, the way it's defined is that you must commit acts of violence, and those acts of violence must be in furtherance of some type of philosophy, as it were. Whether or not that is going to hold up in court.
The reason I ask that is because in the wake of the shooting of Charlie Kirk, the administration and other allies have said this is because of far left liberal ideology, and that's what is creating this anger, and that's what's fomenting these sorts of attacks. So our legal eagle is here. Catherine, do you see this as overbroad language, or is it tailored to make it easy for the Joint Terrorism Task Force or FBI agents to figure out who to put on a list like this?
Well, executive order is not the law. It's the law until it goes to court, and many of Mr. President Trump's executive orders have gone to court. There is no domestic terrorism law in the United States. It's been proposed, it hasn't happened. So that's a problem. So an executive order cannot supersede the federal rules of criminal procedure and penal law. So that will be litigated.
Domestic terrorism laws are hard to go by because of civil rights issues.
Yes.
All right, let me talk about the lawsuit. A federal judge has said that this money has to be given to the city. And by the way, this is not just happening here in New York. It's happening in 11 other states as well. They're all Democratic states where the administration is pulling back on their counterterrorism funding. What has the judge said in response?
Well, that and those other states, in Illinois v. FEMA, there was a court order this week and last week also granting an order on behalf of the state saying, no, you cannot do this, Department of Homeland Security. So this judge yesterday has given the Department of Homeland Security, the government, until October 6th to respond. And on October 9th, there will be a hearing to determine whether or not this temporary restraining order will become a full-fledged preliminary injunction. And what the judge has said, look, it's clear that this is retribution. And you can argue, and some have argued, that this administration has a retribution agenda, whether it's law firms, the media, or colleges. And in this case, because New York City is a sanctuary city and the state has sanctuary policies, that is why this order to withdraw all of this funding has been put in place by the administration. And the judge said, no, you can't do that.
So the senior U.S. District Judge, Judge
Kaplan.
Lewis Kaplan, I'll get you back in here in a minute, Chief, granted New York State's emergency motion for a temporary restraining order, finding that the allocated federal grant money is required to be distributed solely on the risk of terrorist activities and not for any other reasons. Chief, join in.
Absolutely. New York is still the #1 terrorist target in the world. Taking money away from the number one terrorist target is absolutely wrong. And it's something that has to be fought. And hopefully we're going to win this in court. But listen, otherwise this funding all goes into a city budget, and the NYPD now has to fight through a city budget to see if we can get the money to pay these analysts, pay for the equipment that we have. Whether we can get that, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at with the counterterrorism official there, Rebecca Weiner. If you don't get this cash from the federal government, where does it come from? I guess the answer is taxpayers.
Taxpayers in New York, whether or not the city will grant the budget. There are certain technologies that are paid for entirely by this federal grant money that are used to investigate counterterrorism, used to investigate terrorist networks. Now that it would have to go part of the city budget plan and get approved through the city council, it's an arduous process, and whether it would get approved or not, I don't know.
Only Congress can take away funding. They appropriate the funding, they make the laws, they're the ones that created this grant program. An executive branch, the White House cannot.
Well, they're testing that. He believes he has the impoundment rights.
This could go probably to the Supreme Court, because this is a law that Congress enacted. They set the eligibility requirements, and as the chief said, it's if you are a state that is at risk, and who can argue that New York State is not one of the biggest sites that people who want to commit terror would focus on. So this is going to go probably all the way to the Supreme Court.
So what I found so interesting, and I was not aware of this until recently, the NYPD, it's not just officers here in New York City. They have officers all around the world working on stopping plots or threats that might be coming here from abroad, places like Toronto, London, places in the Middle East. But they're also working on stopping plots abroad where they are as well.